What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot to discuss with you today. We have that area of interest in the Eastern Pacific that is rapidly organizing that we'll be briefly talking about at the beginning of this video. And then we're going to be talking about some more tropical development that I've been watching over the last couple of days. A lot of models and ensembles have been picking up on it in the Caribbean in the first week of June. It's from a tropical wave that is currently in the middle of the main development region. That's where it's originating from. So we're also going to be talking about that today. So we have quite a lot to go through. So let's go ahead and dive right into it right here. So here's the situation that we have. We'll start with the Eastern Pacific storm since that's what's developing right now. And I'm mainly talking about this to, number one, get back into the groove of things for me since I haven't done hurricane season videos in a few months. And number two, just to kind of look at the chronological threats in order, because that's kind of what we're going to be doing here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel going forward. So with that being said, let's dive right into it right here. Yesterday, for context, when we were recording this was a 10-80 threat, a 10% probability of development in the next 48 hours, and it's 80% in the next 7 days. That has dramatically changed. We're now at a 70% chance of formation in the next 48 hours, and a 90% chance of formation in the next 7 days. So this system is really organized and developed at a very fast and rather alarming pace. And we're going to go ahead and cover that and talk about that right here. Showers and thunderstorms are showing signs of organization near a broad area of low pressure located several hundred miles south of the coast of southern Mexico. Conditions appear favorable for further development of the system. And a tropical depression is expected to form near the middle portion of the week, while the low moves generally northwestward at around 10 miles per hour. Formation chance in the next 48 hours is at 70% once again, and 90% in the next 7 days. So we have that going on. And let's go ahead and look at the satellite imagery of this, just to kind of show you the evolution of this system and see how this is ultimately going. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the Eastern Pacific. Here we go. This is what we have. Let's actually go ahead and go back to 120 frames. 120 frames is about 20 hours back, and we're going to go ahead and show the evolution of this as this evolved. We're seeing more and more convection firing up near the center of its circulation, near the red X that the NHC has put up. And we're seeing more organized convection as well. You're seeing a lot more instead of this popcorning, you're starting to see more consistent convection. Popcorning convection is stuff that goes up and then goes back down in a few hours. What you're seeing here is more consistent areas of convection, and that's why the NHC has been really upping the probabilities with this, and that's why we're really starting to see signs of this organizing and developing. Also noticing a slight outflow boundary with this as well, just a little bit, not too big of one right now, but you are starting to notice the beginning of that outflow boundary, and it's starting to develop as well. That's a key sign right there that development is going on, and tropical development is very likely to occur in the next day or so. Now, granted, at the rate it's organizing, I could see that happening at this current point. But typically with outflow, it usually means, okay, it has a good channel, it's breathing a lot more, and all of that stuff. It doesn't really give an exact time with that typically, but with the structure that we're seeing right here, I could definitely make the case that this could be developing in the next 24 to 36 hours, given the warm waters, given the weak wind shear, the moisture it's in, and the fact that this is organizing faster than anticipated right here. We're going to have to pay attention to that right here. I want to go ahead and show you the water vapor imagery with this as well. Take a look at this. It's all in an area of very moist air right here. Yes, there is some dry air to the west right here to pay attention to, but it's not impeding what's going on over here in the area of interest that's being tagged. We're going to have to pay attention to it. And you're also seeing some mesoscale convection that's kind of firing off, that's kind of starting to eat into this dry air mass a little bit, and all of that stuff. So that's kind of what we're looking at right here. Let's go ahead and start with and take a quick look at the global sea surface temperatures right here. Global sea surface temperatures, let's go ahead and zoom in on this real quickly. It is currently sitting over 30 plus degrees Celsius of water. Just to kind of give you the latest readings on that, we'll give you the put F5 on that right here. Looking at this 30 degrees Celsius waters, for those of you who do not know, and for those of you tuning in from the United States, that is 86 degrees Fahrenheit of water. all concentrated on the southern part of Mexico and Central America over here. That is a lot of heat right there. That is a lot of warm water that this is sitting over, and this is one of those factors that we're going to have to pay attention to in the Atlantic side. And we'll get more into that in a little bit, but by and large, very large pool of 30 plus degrees Celsius waters right here. The ocean heat content where this system is currently over. Look at this. We're looking at well over 100 OHC in a lot of these areas right here. 100 OHC, 100 ocean heat content, which is measured by kilojoules per centimeter squared. That's the amount of energy. That kind of measures how hot the water is and how deep down it ultimately goes. And over 100 OHC with these measurements, that is indicative of rapid strengthening. That is supportive of rapid strengthening. Anything higher than that, well, you're getting a pretty good rocket with that. 150 OHC is conducive for explosive intensification, as we've seen with Beryl, we saw with Helene, we saw with especially Milton last year. And that's something you're going to want to pay attention to. And we'll look more at the OHC values in the Atlantic Ocean later. But right now for the Eastern Pacific, you're looking at over 100. And these are some of these factors that we're going to continue to be watching. In terms of the wind shear, we can go ahead and quickly take a gander at that as well. I'm going to go ahead and switch the area up to the northeast. Actually, yeah, Northeast Pacific would be perfect for this winds and analysis. Wind shear, and then open the image in a new tab. Here's what we have going on. The wind shear currently, it's on the very eastern side of the map right here. Low wind shear, 5 to 10 knots of wind shear. That's why you have that 70-90 tagged by the NHC right there. Very low wind shear, good moisture, and very warm water. Also, it has an increase of vorticity associated with it as well, and that's another one of those things you're going to want to pay attention to. Vorticity isn't particularly something that's looked at, but we are going to look more at that this hurricane season because that is a very important factor as to if a system is going to develop or not. Vorticity, for those of you who do not know, it's basically spin in the atmosphere going forward. So basically, the stronger the vorticity, the more spin there is, and the more likely something is going to develop, whether it's severe weather, whether it's tropical weather. It's used across a lot of stuff. It also involves a lot of dynamics and all of that stuff. We're not going to get into the dynamics of it, but here's the simple thing you need to know about vorticity. If you have a higher layer. If you have like a higher layer between your 1,000 millibar heights, which is near the surface, and your 500 millibar heights, which is about, which can range anywhere from like 15 to 19. Well, not 15,000. That's a little too low. Anywhere from like 16 to 20,000 feet. The higher those layer is, the more depth there is, the more vorticity there ultimately is as well. It's kind of there's a lot of math with that, but we're not going to get into that essentially. So that's what we're taking a look at with this system right here. Taking a quick look at the models with it, let's go ahead and move to the Eastern Pacific right here. North Pacific's not going to cut the mustard. EPAC, there you go. Let's go ahead and start with the European run. With this, we'll go with the 0Z, just to kind of give you an idea. Now, granted, these runs are a bit outdated, and I don't think they've been kind of picking up on how quickly this system's been organizing, but we'll have to pay attention to that. So here's what we have. This system organizes in the next couple of days, and then it starts to develop right there. It gets down to tropical storm strength. The European wants this to be a strong tropical storm at its peak, but given the amount of time it has over these good conditions and given the amount of how long it's taking to develop, I definitely could see this as a hurricane contender for sure. And I do think the European is being a bit conservative given some of the parameters we're looking at, but we'll have to see what happens as the system develops. Right there, that's the European. Next run we'll show you is the GFS. Right here, GFS will actually go ahead and go back to the 0Z to make it a more accurate comparison. Actually gets down to hurricane strength, category 2 intensity, before it moves into that dry air and wind shear, and then it gets torn apart and out to sea right here. Similar situation with the 12Z. It organizes quickly, develops category 2 strength as it approaches the Baja California, but then wind shear and dry air tear it apart. So that's what we have going on with the GFS, the CMC run right here. We can go ahead and show you the 0Z. just to kind of give you an idea, CMC near hurricane strength right there. Then it gets torn apart by dry air and wind shear. Similar situation to the 12Z. We'll have to pay attention to that. So that's kind of what we're looking at. We're looking at one of those high ceiling type of events that we're going to want to pay attention to. And I know I've been spending like the first like 10 or so minutes of this video covering something in the Eastern Pacific and not the Atlantic. Well, I just kind of wanted to show you that to kind of give you the parameters and kind of practice for myself practice at what we're looking at when things do go off in the Atlantic. And things might start going off pretty soon because there is some signs of development happening in the near future in the Atlantic Ocean. Here's the situation that we have going on right here. Actually, I'm going to try to pull it up. Perfect. This is on Yoshi's website. Shout out for him for making this and all of that. It makes my life a lot easier. So here's the situation that we have. We have a tropical wave that's currently kind of hooked in with the ITCZ around 35 degrees west, and that tropical wave is expected to move into the Caribbean Sea, move through it, and based on some ensemble and operational runs, tropical development is possible in the Western Caribbean and in the southern Gulf of Mexico before a potential impact in Cuba, the Yucatan Peninsula, maybe the Gulf Coast. We're going to have to see what happens going forward, but you have to keep in mind a lot of what I'm about to show you is very far out. And some things are obviously meant to change, but given the consistent nature over the last couple of days of these signals, I felt comfortable enough to cover this and give you an idea of, okay, this is the potential first threat. What are we going to do? What's going to happen? And kind of give a general range as to what I think is going to be happening from that. So that's what we have. Right here, we have this tropical wave. In fact, we can go ahead and move back to the satellite imagery and show you this as well. Here's the Atlantic-wide satellite imagery. Where it's hovering right about here, and I'll go ahead and actually go to about 30 frames just to kind of outline it a little bit better. Kind of hovering right about where my cursor is right here, if that helps you a little bit. And it's moving slowly west towards towards the Caribbean Sea, towards the Lesser Antilles right here, and then it's expected to move through the Caribbean and into the Western Caribbean, and then ensemble runs are really picking up on it as well. Let's go ahead. I actually want to go ahead and switch back with the runs real quickly and see what we're potentially looking at. Let's go ahead and go to North Atlantic and go to the GFS to kind of see what the conditions are looking like that far out. Let's go ahead and start with the wind shear conditions right here to kind of give it an idea of what we're potentially looking at. So here's wind shear, still pretty strong wind shear across much of the Caribbean Sea and much of the Atlantic Ocean right here. But ultimately, you do start to notice that about a week out, you're starting to see a lifting of the wind shear, starting to see a ridge pattern start to build up and ultimately lift the wind shear out of part of the Western Caribbean Sea. You're looking at that. You're looking at a trough and a tut developing in the Gulf of Mexico right here, allowing for a period of weaker wind shear to kind of start taking over for a brief period of time. Ultimately, the wind shear from this point out, we're like June 6th at this current point, is relatively moderate, but then it starts to pick back up and wind shear ultimately starts to increase once again. But we'll have to pay attention to it, see what happens. But the extreme western part of the Caribbean, you do start to see a decrease of shear just by a little bit, and we're going to want to keep a very close eye on that, as that's when this tropical wave is expected to develop. It's supposed to kind of start seeing some signs around June 5th or so of potential development. Keep in mind, this is so far out. We don't know everything. I just figured I'd tell you that real quickly. Let's go ahead and go over to the moisture right now, the relative humidity, just to kind of give an idea of what we're looking at. Here's the GFS for you right here. Relative humidity, you do see a moisture infusion from the one tropical wave that's currently moving into the Caribbean right now, but ultimately dry air is going to be kind of persistent through the Western Caribbean for the next few days. But then you do see an increase of moisture going forward. You see a pretty nice moisture area for a little bit, but then it starts to move out. But that moisture injection needs to be paid close attention to, because there is one pocket of moist air that this tropical system could potentially develop, this tropical wave rather, that could develop into the Western Caribbean. So you're going to want to pay attention to that. Yes, there is still some wind shear, but if you have plenty of warm water and moist air and good vorticity, a tropical wave can definitely overcome 30 knots of wind shear if it is strong enough. Now, I'm not making a claim that 30 knots of wind shear isn't going to kill this thing or anything like that. I'm not making that claim that, oh, it can survive a lot of shear. No, it can't actually. But there have been some exceptions where I've seen storms develop in pretty bad shear conditions initially. A good example of that was Hurricane Fiona back in 2022. When it developed, it was in 50 knots of wind shear and it was absolutely sheared, yet its vorticity and it was in a moisture area so strong that it was able to intensify despite being sheared. It was a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm with all of the convection being on its eastern side, which is absolutely astronomical for a developing system. And then you have this moisture plume moving through, and then you have less dry air to work with, and that's when things start to get interesting. You do have a pretty decent moisture infusion from the Central American gyre as well, and that's when things start to get pretty interesting, to say the very least. So that's what we have for the long-range threats right here. If we go right there, now let's go ahead and show you some of the ensemble runs that are predicting that this thing is going to be happening. We'll go ahead and start with the European, because this is the 0Z European. We've been noticing these trends over the last few days, and I can actually go ahead and pull up some more charts from my tropical team at Storms United real quickly. I know Alex and Yoshi in particular have been really on this thing, and they've been keeping me updated with it, and they didn't show this to me for the first couple of days just so that way they could keep a look at it and not have me report on this unless they felt they were pretty confident. Here's what we were looking at for 0Z yesterday. Right here, this was the signal. Pretty weak signal with this right here. A lot of weak, a lot of weak signals right here. Yes, there were some strong ones as well, but they weren't particularly that concentrated. They weren't they were more isolated. Looking at the 12Z now, looking at this, definitely more concentrated, definitely a little bit stronger as well. We're going to have to pay attention to that as well. And then looking at the 0Z, yeah, you're definitely still seeing that. You're definitely seeing a bit more spread out around the Gulf, but you are seeing a good initialization area with these systems as well. So we're going to have to pay attention to. I believe this is like 15 to 20 ensembles out of 51 that the European runs, and this has been kind of consistent. We've seen a bit of an uptick, not so much in terms of the amount of ensembles, but more so in terms of the amount, the intensity of this, what we're paying attention to, in terms of the intensity of the ensemble. So we're going to want to pay attention to that. So it's definitely looking like it's going to be more of a power threat than a total threat, it seems. I don't personally think we're going to look at maybe like a early June hurricane or anything like that, like some of these ensembles are predicting. I don't personally think that's going to happen at this current point. The shear is too strong. There's always dry air. And I don't think that there's going to be a good enough environment for that to happen unless the wind shear unexpectedly collapses or something like that. But we will pay attention to that for sure. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and move away from the ensembles. I'll actually go ahead and show Weather Nerds for the GFS runs as well. We can go ahead and show the 12Z. Actually, never mind. The 12Z does not go go far enough out. We'll go ahead and show the 0Z right here at 300 hours. So here's what we're looking at with the GFS. Similar situation, tropical development in the Western Caribbean Sea, and you are seeing some power with these areas right here, some power with these ensembles. However, what I'm looking at, you're looking at like 10 to 15 ensemble members out of 51 right there. So, and keep in mind, this is extremely far out as well. This is 300 hours out. But considering that some of the operational runs also do have some signals with this as well, I'm more inclined to pay attention to it than I would previously. And let's go ahead and show you some of these operational runs as well. Let's go ahead and show you the European, the GFS. The 0Z European and GFS definitely had a stronger signal. I'm not trying to push a narrative or anything like that. I'm kind of trying to show you the consistency of these runs and to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at and see if the ensembles and the operational do coordinate. And they definitely do, going through it right here. European does have a signal right here, not particularly strong, definitely quite a bit rainy, and this is 10 days out as it moves through Florida and Georgia and the Carolinas right there. Going to the GFS very quickly, let's go ahead and go to the 0Z as well. Similar situation, although it does move towards Cuba, makes landfall over there. It kind of doesn't particularly do that much. It kind of gets shredded over there. Then you do have a low pressure system moving through the Carolinas, and then that's pretty much what we have going on. So we're definitely starting to see more consistent signals with this, and we're going to want to pay attention to this, and we'll continue to keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. If you want to come hang out with us or ask questions or join our tropical team, be sure to join the Stormies United Discord server. The link to that is in the end screen. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.